The call came during my lunch break, Ryan's voice cracking with an urgency I'd never heard before. "Get out of the house now, Tessa. Don't pack, don't ask questions. Just go to your parents' place and wait for me there." I gripped my phone tighter, my sandwich forgotten on my desk. "Ryan, what's going on? Please just trust me on this. I'll explain everything later." The line went dead. My hands trembled as I gathered my purse. The marketing proposal I'd spent weeks perfecting lay abandoned on my computer screen. 3 months of marriage, and already my world was tilting on its axis. Taking off early? Sarah from accounting peered over her cubicle wall. Family emergency. The words tasted bitter. I'd used the same excuse last week when Margaret, my mother-in-law, had orchestrated another of her impromptu family dinners, the ones where she'd parade Clara around like some sort of trophy daughter-in-law that never was. The drive home was a blur of red lights and horn blasts. My mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had something happened to Frank? Was Margaret finally making her move to destroy our marriage? Or was it Clara, with her perfectly timed appearances and lingering touches on Ryan's arm? I pulled into our driveway, half expecting to find the house in flames. Instead, everything looked exactly as I'd left it this morning. The newspaper still on the porch, my gardening gloves draped over the railing. The normalcy felt wrong, somehow more threatening than any visible danger. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. "Heard about Ryan's call. Just checking if you're okay. We're all worried." We. That single word sent ice through my veins. How did she know about the call? And who exactly was we? I deleted the message without responding and dialed Ryan again. Straight to voicemail. Inside the house, everything seemed undisturbed, but the air felt heavy with secrets. I grabbed my laptop and a few essential documents from our home office. Whatever was happening, I wasn't walking into it blind. Another text buzzed through, Margaret this time. "Dear, perhaps we should talk before you do anything rash. Family matters are best handled within the family." I laughed, a harsh sound in the empty house. Family. Right. Because she treated me like family from day one, hadn't she? With her subtle digs about my career, her constant reminiscing about Ryan and Clara's childhood together, her pointed comments about traditional values. The front door creaked. I froze, clutching my laptop to my chest. "Tessa." Clara's voice floated through the hallway. "Your car's outside. I know you're home." I slipped into the kitchen, my heart hammering. Through the window, I could see Paul's car idling in the street, Clara's brother waiting behind the wheel. "We're just trying to help," Clara called out, her footsteps moving closer. "Margaret's worried sick about Ryan. He's not been himself lately, has he? Ever since the wedding." I eased open the back door, thankful I'd had it oiled last week. Clara's voice continued, honey sweet and reasonable, as I crept along the side of the house. My phone vibrated again. "Ryan? Don't let them find you." "Almost there. 10 minutes. I ran. Past the garden where Margaret had criticized my choice of flowers. Past the fence Ryan and I had painted together on our first weekend as homeowners. Past all the dreams I'd had of belonging to this family. As I pulled out of the neighborhood, I caught a glimpse of Clara in my rearview mirror, standing in our driveway with her phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't smiling anymore. I drove to my parents' house with my hands clenched on the steering wheel, my wedding ring catching the afternoon sun. Whatever game they were playing, whatever trap they'd set, they'd chosen the wrong woman to underestimate. I sat at my parents' kitchen table, staring at the family photos lining their walls. Happy faces, genuine smiles. Nothing like the brittle pleasantries at the Morgan family dinners. The memory of last week's disaster surfaced, sharp as broken glass. "More wine, Tessa dear?" Margaret had held the bottle over my glass, not waiting for an answer. "Clara, you remember how Ryan used to hate red wine, until you introduced him to that lovely Bordeaux on your trip to France?" Clara's laugh had tinkled like wind chimes. "Oh, that was ages ago. Before university, wasn't it, Ryan?" I'd watched my husband's face tighten. "I don't remember that trip." "Of course you do," Margaret had insisted. "It was right after that summer you two dated." The silence that followed had been deafening. Ryan had never mentioned dating Clara. Not once in our 2 years together. Now, sitting in my childhood home, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old social media posts. There they were, Ryan and Clara, tagged in countless photos over the years. Family vacations, holiday celebrations, casual dinners. In every image, Clara stood just a little too close, her hand always finding its way to Ryan's arm or shoulder. The doorbell rang, startling me from my investigation. Through the peephole, I saw Frank Morgan shifting nervously on the porch. "Tessa." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "Does Margaret know you're here?" He shook his head, looking older than his 62 years. "She thinks I'm at the hardware store. May I come in?" In the kitchen, Frank's hands trembled as he accepted a cup of coffee. I should have said something sooner. About Clara, about all of it. "Why now?" "Because I heard them planning." He stared into his cup. "Margaret and Clara, they were in the garden yesterday, talking about your honeymoon next month." My stomach clenched. "What about it?" "Clara's brother Paul. He's been following you, taking pictures. They're going to send them to Ryan, edited to make it look like." He trailed off, unable to finish. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "That's why Ryan called me today? Because of their photos?" Frank nodded. "He found them on his computer this morning. Clara must have uploaded them when she was over for dinner." "She's not well, Tessa. Her obsession with Ryan. It's gotten worse since the wedding. And Margaret encourages it. Margaret sees what she wants to see. She's always viewed Clara as the daughter she never had." He met my eyes. The daughter she could control. My phone buzzed, another text from Clara. "Just talk to Ryan. He's worried about your mental state. We all are. Let's meet and sort this out." I showed Frank the message. His face crumpled. "They'll try to isolate you, make you look unstable. It's what they did to Ryan's last girlfriend before you. Margaret convinced everyone the poor girl was mentally ill, spreading rumors about the family. What happened to her? She moved away. Changed her name, I think." Frank stood, his coffee untouched. "I should go. But Tessa, be careful. Margaret's been playing these games for 40 years. She's very good at them." After he left, I sat alone in the growing darkness, pieces clicking into place. The constant surveillance, the orchestrated run-ins with Clara, the subtle undermining of my confidence. They'd been laying groundwork for months. My phone lit up with Ryan's message. "On my way. Don't trust anything they say. I have proof." I walked to my old bedroom, where a photo album from my wedding day sat on the bookshelf. Flipping through it, I found what I was looking for. A candid shot of Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. Her expression wasn't one of friendly affection or even jealousy. It was hunger. The front door opened downstairs. Footsteps on the stairs, too heavy to be my parents. "Tessa." Ryan's voice. "Are you up here?" I closed the album, my decision made. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. In marketing, my entire career was built on understanding human nature and manipulating perceptions. Time to show them how it's really done. Ryan spread the doctored photos across my parents' dining room table. Each one told a carefully crafted lie. Me embracing Paul in shadowy doorways, slipping into hotel lobbies, sharing intimate conversations in cafes. The timestamps matched days I'd been working late at the office. "Clara's brother has been following you for weeks," Ryan said, his voice tight. "They planted these on my work computer this morning, along with emails they'd fabricated between you and Paul." I picked up one photo, studying how they'd manipulated the lighting to make an innocent business lunch look like a clandestine meeting. "Your mother's fingerprints are all over this. She slipped up." Ryan pulled out his phone, playing a voice recording. Margaret's voice filled the room. "Once Ryan sees these, he'll have to admit Tessa isn't who he thinks she is. Clara will be there to help him through it, just like before." My fingers clenched around the photo. Before. Ryan's face darkened. "Remember what Dad said about my last girlfriend? There's more. Clara created a similar setup with doctored photos back then. But this time," he hesitated. "This time she made a mistake. Left metadata on the original photos showing when they were actually taken." A text lit up my phone, Clara again. "Ryan's not thinking clearly. Let me help fix this. I care about both of you. She's getting desperate," I said, showing Ryan the message. "There's something else." He pulled out a USB drive. Dad found this in Mom's study. It's everything, years of manipulation. Photos she edited, emails she faked, even a journal where she planned how to break up my relationships. She's been grooming Clara as my backup plan since high school. The front door opened downstairs. My parents' voices drifted up, followed by another Frank's. "They're here," Frank called up. "Margaret and Clara." They followed me. Ryan moved to the window. "Paul's car is blocking the driveway." I gathered the photos, my marketing brain already spinning possibilities. "Let them come up. I want to hear how they explain these timestamps." "Tessa." Ryan touched my arm. "They're dangerous when cornered." "So am I." Footsteps on the stairs. Clara appeared first, all concerned smiles and gentle hands. "Oh, thank goodness you're both here. We've been so worried." Margaret followed, her face a mask of maternal concern. "Ryan, darling, step away from her. You don't know what she's capable of." I held up one of the doctored photos. "Interesting choice of editing software, Clara. Adobe's timestamp feature is quite revealing." Color drained from Clara's face. Margaret stepped forward, reaching for the photo. "You're confused, dear. Those pictures show Paul following me for weeks?" I pulled out my phone, clicking play on a recording app. "Or show how you and Clara plan to plant them on Ryan's computer. Because I have to say, discussing criminal conspiracy in your garden wasn't very smart." "You recorded us?" Clara's voice shook. "No." Frank stepped into the doorway. "I did." Margaret whirled on her husband. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have." Frank's voice was steady. "I sent copies to everyone, family, friends, Clara's fiancé. Even that private investigator you hired last year to follow Tessa. Turns out he has quite a conscience when he learns he's been manipulated into participating in stalking." Clara lunged for the photos, but Ryan blocked her path. "It's over, Clara. All of it." "You don't understand," Clara whispered. "We were meant to be together. Your mother promised." "My mother promised a lot of things," Ryan cut in. "To a lot of people. But she doesn't control me anymore. And neither do you." I watched Clara's facade crack, years of obsession and manipulation showing through. She turned to Margaret, desperate. Tell him about the plan, about how we were going to fix everything." But Margaret was staring at Frank, 30 years of control slipping through her fingers. "You weak, pathetic man. After everything I've done for this family." "That's exactly why I did it," Frank said quietly. "For our family. Our real family." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "You have two choices. Leave now and never contact us again, or we take everything, the photos, the recordings, the evidence of stalking, to the police." Clara's face contorted. "You wouldn't." I met her gaze, letting her see the truth. "Try me." The silence stretched, heavy with decades of manipulation and lies. Then Margaret turned, her shoulders stiff with fury, and walked out. Clara remained, staring at Ryan with naked longing. "Clara," I said softly, "don't make me prove how far I'll go to protect what's mine." She fled, her sobs echoing down the stairs. But I felt no victory, only a cold certainty that this was just the beginning. The email arrived at midnight. A single photo attachment from an anonymous account. My hand shook as I opened it. Margaret and Clara outside a psychiatric facility, dated 3 years ago. The caption read, "Ask Ryan about Jessica." I stared at my sleeping husband on my parents' guest bed. His face troubled even in rest. Jessica. The name scratched at something in my memory. A whispered conversation at our wedding reception, quickly silenced when I'd approached. My phone buzzed. "Frank. Need to meet. Alone. The diner on 5th. Now." Ryan stirred. "Everything okay?" "Just work." I lied, the words bitter on my tongue. "Go back to sleep." The diner was empty except for Frank, hunched over a coffee cup. When I slid into the booth, he pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Jessica Martinez," he said. Ryan's fiancée before Clara orchestrated her breakdown. Inside the envelope, newspaper clippings told the story. Jessica Martinez, promising young attorney, committed after a public breakdown. Released 6 months later, she disappeared completely. Clara didn't just want to break them up, Frank continued. She wanted to destroy Jessica. And Margaret helped. How? The same way they're trying with you. Small things at first, moving items in Jessica's house, sending emails from fake accounts, arranging coincidental meetings that made her look unstable. He paused. Ryan never knew the full truth. He thought Jessica's breakdown was real. My coffee grew cold as Frank detailed their methodology. The gaslighting, the carefully planted evidence, the slow isolation from friends and family. Why tell me this now? Because they're escalating faster with you. They learned from their mistakes with Jessica. Frank's hands trembled. Margaret's already contacted your firm's HR department. Anonymous concerns about your mental health. The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright. Ryan would never believe. Ryan believed it about Jessica. Frank's eyes were haunted. He trusted his mother's concern then. And Clara. She's perfected her role as the supportive friend. My phone lit up with a text from Clara. Ryan's worried about you sneaking out at night. Let me help before things get worse. They're watching the house, I realized. Frank nodded. Paul's car. 2 blocks down. I scrolled through my photos, finding the one from my wedding. Clara watching Ryan during our first dance. The hunger in her eyes matched the woman who'd stood outside that psychiatric facility. There's something else, Frank said. Jessica didn't just disappear. The diner's door chimed. Clara walked in, her concerned smile perfectly practiced. Oh, thank goodness, she gushed. Ryan's been frantic. He woke up and you were gone. She reached for my arm. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Sweetie, you're not well. We can all see it. Her voice dripped sympathy. The paranoia, the late-night wanderings, the accusations. Just like poor Jessica. Clara. Frank's voice held a warning. She ignored him. Ryan's waiting outside. Let's get you home, get you help. Before you hurt yourself. Through the diner's windows, I saw Ryan's car pulling up. Margaret in the passenger seat. The trap was closing. I stood, my chair scraping loudly. You know what happened to Jessica, don't you? Clara's mask slipped for just a moment. Jessica was sick. She needed help. No. The revelation hit like lightning. She figured it out. That's why she disappeared. She wasn't running from a breakdown. She was running from you. Tessa. Ryan's voice from the doorway. Mom told me about the HR complaints. About your behavior. I met his eyes, seeing the doubt there. The same doubt that had probably clouded his judgment with Jessica. But I wasn't Jessica. Tell him, Clara, I said softly. Tell him about the facility. About the photos. Clara's composure cracked. Ryan, she's confused. The timestamps don't lie. I pulled out my phone, showing the anonymous email. Neither do psychiatric facility visitor logs. Should we call them? See who visited Jessica before her breakdown? The diner fell silent. In that moment, I saw my choices clearly. Run like Jessica or stand and fight. And I'd never been good at running. Ryan, I said, not breaking eye contact with Clara. I think it's time you heard the whole story about your ex-fiancé. The package arrived 3 days after the diner confrontation. No return address, just my name in careful handwriting. Inside, a USB drive and a note. You're not the first. You won't be the last. J. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. Video files, dozens of them, showing Clara and Margaret's methodical destruction of Jessica Martinez. Security footage, phone recordings, emails, a digital breadcrumb trail of calculated madness. I found Jessica. Ryan's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway of our temporary bedroom at my parents' house, his face ashen. She's in Seattle, working under her mother's maiden name. Did you talk to her? She agreed to video call. Tonight. He sat heavily on the bed. She said Clara visited her in the facility, told her if she ever came back, there'd be worse consequences than a psychiatric hold. My phone buzzed. Clara's fiancé, James. Can we meet? Something's not right with Clara. I showed Ryan the message. It's probably a trap. Or an opportunity. Ryan's jaw tightened. James needs to know what he's getting into. The cafe was crowded enough to feel safe. James sat alone, turning his coffee cup nervously. When he saw us, his face crumpled. Clara's pregnant, he blurted out. At least, that's what she told Margaret. But when I called her doctor. Let me guess, I said. No record of pregnancy. He nodded. And I found these. He slid his phone across the table. Photos of Clara outside our house watching through windows. Dozens of them spanning months. She doesn't know I saw them. My phone lit up, Frank. Margaret's gone. Cleared out her accounts this morning. They're making their move, Ryan muttered. James leaned forward. There's more. Clara's been meeting someone at the psychiatric facility where Jessica stayed. A doctor. They're building a case. The cafe door chimed. Clara walked in, her face a perfect mask of concern. Behind her, Paul blocked the exit. James, darling. Her voice dripped honey. I've been so worried. When Mother Morgan said you were meeting them. She placed a protective hand over her non-existent pregnancy. Stop lying, Clara. James stood. I know about the photos. About Jessica. Clara's mask slipped, just for a moment. They've poisoned you against me. Just like they're trying to poison everyone. She turned to the other customers. My fiancé's sister is mentally ill. We're just trying to get her help. People started staring. Phones came out. Recording this? I stood slowly. Good. Because Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan are about to be famous for all the wrong reasons. You don't want to do this, Paul warned, moving closer. Actually, I do. I opened my laptop, turning it to face the growing crowd. Jessica Martinez sent me something interesting. Want to see how they drove her to a breakdown? Or should we start with the fake pregnancy records Clara's been creating? Clara lunged for the laptop. You stupid bitch. There it is. Ryan's voice cut through the chaos. He held up his phone, recording. The real Clara Bennett. She froze, realizing her mistake. The cafe had gone silent. Dozens of phones capturing her transformation from concerned friend to snarling aggressor. Where's my mother? Ryan asked quietly. Clara's laugh was brittle. Somewhere you'll never find her. She's making sure everything's ready. For when Tessa has her inevitable breakdown. You mean like this? I pressed play on Jessica's video. Clara's voice filled the cafe. Just sign the commitment papers, Jessica. Admit you're unstable, and this all goes away. James backed away from Clara, horror dawning on his face. What have you done? What I had to do. Clara's composure cracked completely. He was supposed to be mine. Margaret promised. After Jessica, after every other girl she helped me eliminate. She turned to Ryan, desperate. We were meant to be together. Your mother understood that. No, Ryan said softly. My mother used you. Just like she used everyone else. My phone buzzed one final time, an email from Jessica. Sending this to every news outlet now. Good luck. Clara saw the headline appear on my screen. Systematic gaslighting ring exposed. Prominent family's mental health manipulation scheme. In that moment, watching Clara's world implode, I felt no satisfaction. Only a bone-deep weariness and a single burning question. Where was Margaret, and what final trap had she set? The answer came sooner than expected, as police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The police didn't come for Clara. They came for me. Tessa Morgan, the officer read from his tablet. You're wanted for questioning regarding allegations of stalking, harassment, and cyber threats against Clara Bennett and Margaret Morgan. The cafe had gone silent. Phones still recorded, but now they were pointed at me. Clara's mask of victimhood slipped perfectly back into place, tears streaming down her face. See, she whispered. This is exactly what we were afraid of. Ryan stepped forward. This is ridiculous. We have proof. Of elaborate forgeries, Paul interrupted, holding up a folder. Created by your wife to harass my sister. The metadata proves it. My laptop. The USB drive. Everything Jessica sent. They'd somehow corrupted it all, twisted it back against me. I watched the officer scroll through what looked like my emails, my photos, all doctored to show an obsession with destroying Clara's life. Check the timestamps. I started, but Clara cut in. Just like with Jessica, she sobbed. She's trying to recreate what happened, but making me the villain this time. The doctors warned us this might happen. My phone buzzed one last time before the officer confiscated it. Frank? Margaret's at your office. She's speaking to HR now. The pieces clicked together. While we'd been focused on Clara's breakdown, Margaret had been methodically destroying my credibility, my career, my life. Ryan. I turned to my husband, seeing doubt flicker across his face. Don't let them do this. He reached for me, but the officer stepped between us. Sir, given the nature of the allegations, you should maintain distance until. He's my husband. And my son. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. She stood in the cafe doorway, elegant and composed. Who were trying to protect from your escalating behavior. The room spun. Everything we'd gathered, every piece of evidence, they'd planned for it all, turned it against us, made me look exactly like Jessica. Obsessed, unstable, dangerous. The psychiatric hold is temporary, the officer said quietly. Just until. No. Ryan's voice cracked. Mom, stop this. Margaret touched his arm. Sweetheart, we tried to handle this privately. But after what happened at the office today. What happened at the office? My voice sounded distant, strange. Security footage of you threatening Clara this morning, Paul supplied smoothly. Very convincing performance. But I hadn't been near the office. I'd been. The realization hit like ice water. They'd planned this months ago. Built their case while we thought we were building ours. Show them, I whispered to Ryan. Jessica's video call tonight. Already handled, Margaret said softly. The real Jessica Martinez called earlier, very disturbed by your attempts to impersonate her. She's willing to testify about your obsession with her story. Clara stepped closer, her voice gentle. Let them help you, Tessa. Like they helped me understand my feelings about Ryan weren't healthy. The ultimate twist, making Clara the reformed obsessive and me the new threat. I looked at James, still clutching his phone. The photos weren't taken by Clara, Paul finished. The metadata shows they came from your phone. Stalking her, building your case. Very thorough. The officer took my arm. Through the cafe window, I saw the news vans arriving. Margaret had orchestrated every detail, down to the public breakdown they'd predicted I'd have. Ryan, I tried one last time, but Clara was already beside him, playing the supportive friend. We'll take care of him, Margaret promised, while you get the help you need. As they led me out, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the cafe window. Wild-eyed, disheveled, exactly how they wanted me to look. How they planned for me to look. The news cameras rolled as I was guided into the police car. Through the window, I watched Clara comfort Ryan. Margaret standing protectively nearby. The perfect family tableau, with me cast as the unstable outsider who tried to destroy their happiness. Don't worry, the officer said kindly. The facility has an excellent reputation. The same facility where Jessica had been held. Where Clara had threatened her. Where they'd perfected their technique. The car door closed, sealing me in silence. In the rearview mirror, I saw Margaret smile. The facility's visitor room smelled of artificial lavender and despair. 3 days of observation had taught me their routines, their blind spots. Now I waited, watching Margaret and Clara arrange themselves across the table. Their faces masks of rehearsed concern. The doctors say you're not cooperating, Margaret began. I smiled, the same empty smile Clara had perfected. How's Ryan? Worried sick, Clara answered quickly. He wanted to come, but you couldn't risk him seeing the real Jessica Martinez, could you? Their mask slipped just slightly. Margaret recovered first. The delusions are getting worse. Dr. Andrews warned us. Dr. Andrews. I placed a USB drive on the table. The same one who helped you forge Jessica's commitment papers? He's been very cooperative since the FBI started investigating medical fraud. Clara's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. You're lying. Am I? I turned to the observation window. Frank. The door opened. Frank walked in, followed by Ryan and a woman I recognized from Jessica's photos. The real Jessica Martinez. Hello, Clara, Jessica said softly. It's been 3 years. Margaret stood so quickly her chair toppled. This is inappropriate. My daughter-in-law is having an episode. Your daughter-in-law, Ryan cut in, has been working with federal investigators for the past 72 hours. Every conversation in this facility is recorded, including your little chat with Dr. Andrews yesterday. Clara lunged for the door, but Frank blocked her path. Paul confessed everything, he said. About the faked photos, the forged emails. He took a plea deal this morning. You don't understand, Clara whispered, turning to Ryan. Everything I did was for us. Margaret promised. Margaret promised a lot of things, Jessica interrupted. To a lot of women. How many were there before me, Margaret? How many lives did you and Clara destroy to keep Ryan under your control? I stood, finally letting my mask fall. The thing about marketing? We understand patterns. Narratives. Once Jessica reached out, it wasn't hard to find the others. 6 women. 6 mental breakdowns. 6 lives destroyed. You planned this, Margaret hissed. Used your own commitment to trap us. I learned from the best. I moved closer, watching her facade crack. But unlike you, I had something you never expected. Actual proof. Actual witnesses. And a husband who chose me. Clara screamed, a raw sound of desperation, and threw herself at Ryan. She's lying. Just like the others. I'm the only one who truly loves you. The orderlies rushed in, but it was Jessica who spoke, her voice cutting through Clara's hysteria. That's exactly what you said before you visited me here. Before you told me what would happen if I ever came back. Ryan stepped away from Clara's grasping hands. It's over, Clara. The FBI has everything. The fake documents, the surveillance footage, Dr. Andrews' confession. Even Mom's offshore accounts where she paid everyone off. Margaret's composure finally shattered. You ungrateful. She lunged at me, but the orderlies were faster. I watched them restrain both women, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. You know what your biggest mistake was? I asked softly, assuming I'd play by your rules. That I'd break like the others. You'll regret this, Margaret spat as they led her away. You have no idea what I'm still capable of. Actually, Frank interrupted, we do. That's why I gave the FBI access to all your private accounts this morning, including the ones in the Caymans. Clara's sobs echoed down the hallway. Ryan took my hand as Jessica spoke with the federal agents. I'm sorry, he whispered, for doubting even for a moment. I squeezed his hand, watching Margaret and Clara being led away in handcuffs instead of me. You came through when it mattered. Frank touched my shoulder. The others are here. The women Margaret and Clara targeted. They're ready to testify. I nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. We'd won, but the victory felt hollow somehow. Looking at Clara's broken form and Margaret's hatred, I realized revenge wasn't what I'd really wanted. Justice was. And as I walked out of the facility a free woman, I knew we'd found something better than revenge. We'd found truth. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all. The courtroom emptied slowly after Margaret's sentencing. 20 years for conspiracy, fraud, and false imprisonment. Clara had taken a plea deal, trading testimony for a lighter sentence. Paul would serve 5 years for his role. Justice served cold and clean. I lingered in my seat, staring at the judge's empty bench, until Ryan touched my shoulder. Ready? Almost. I pulled out an old photograph I'd found while packing up his childhood home. Margaret, much younger, stood beside another woman who shared her calculating smile. The back read, Margaret and Helen, sisters in arms. Dad confirmed it this morning, I said. Your Aunt Helen did the same thing to him that Margaret tried to do to you. Isolated him, controlled his relationships. It wasn't just about keeping you. It was about recreating her sister's perfect family fantasy. Ryan studied the photo. Helen died in a psychiatric facility. Dad always said she had problems, but now we know what really happened. I handed him another photo. Helen with a young Margaret, teaching her the art of manipulation. The pattern started long before us. Frank waited by the courthouse steps with Jessica and the other survivors. 6 women whose lives Margaret and Clara had nearly destroyed. Now they stood tall, unbroken. The support group meets next week, Jessica said. We're calling it Phoenix Rising. She smiled. From the ashes, you know? I watched them share knowing looks, these women who'd faced the same darkness I had. Their strength wasn't in revenge or even justice. It was in refusing to let the experience define them. The house is almost packed up, Frank said. Found this in Margaret's study. He handed me a leather-bound journal. Might help explain some things. Or not. Sometimes understanding the monster doesn't make it less monstrous. Inside, Margaret's elegant handwriting detailed decades of manipulation, not just of Ryan but of everyone around her. The last entry, dated the day before her arrest, read, "Tessa sees the game now, but she doesn't understand. It's not about winning. It's about playing forever." She thought she was teaching me. I realized. Every move, every countermove, she was grooming me to become her, just like Helen groomed her. Ryan took the journal, his face troubled. "We could burn it. End the pattern here." "No." I closed the journal firmly. "It belongs in evidence. For the next time someone like Margaret tries to play these games." We walked to our car, leaving the courthouse and its justice behind. Frank headed to his new apartment, free from Margaret's shadow. Jessica and the others dispersed, carrying their victory like shields against future darkness. At home, our real home, not the battlefield it had become, I found one last photo that Margaret had hidden. Ryan as a child, smiling genuinely, before his mother's manipulation had dimmed his light, before Clara had been positioned as his savior, before the games began. "We're having dinner with your parents tonight," Ryan said, watching me study the photo. "Mom wants to hear about the support group. My mother's cooking. My father's bad jokes. Simple things that Margaret had tried to twist into weapons. But she'd failed, because she'd never understood what real family meant." The doorbell rang, a delivery. Inside the package, a letter from Clara, forwarded by her lawyer. I started to tear it up, then stopped. Understanding the past didn't mean letting it control our future. I placed the unopened letter in a box with Margaret's journal and the old photos. Evidence of a pattern we'd broken. A legacy we'd refused to inherit. "Ready for dinner?" Ryan asked. I looked around our home at the life we were reclaiming. The shadows were still there, but they no longer held power. Margaret had wanted to teach me her game, but she'd taught me something else instead. How to end it. "Ready," I said, leaving the box of shadows behind. Sometimes victory isn't in winning the game. It's in refusing to play. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, on your own terms in the light.
Growing up in my family was tough. I was often labeled the underachiever, especially in contrast to my older sister Harper, who excelled in everything she did. She was the epitome of what our parents admired: intelligent, disciplined, and consistently top of her class. Harper's remarkable focus and ambition seemed to set a standard I could never live up to. I found myself struggling in school, always pushing tasks to the last minute and forgetting important details. It wasn't just academics that were difficult for me. These issues permeated all areas of my life, making me feel inadequate. For the longest time, I believed I was just lazy or inept. It wasn't until later in life that I discovered the root of my struggles. I was diagnosed with ADHD. This diagnosis was a turning point, helping me understand the challenges I faced since childhood. The pieces of my life's puzzle, from my concentration issues to my chronic procrastination, all clicked into place within the framework of ADHD. With medication and various strategies, I began to gain a control over my life that I never thought possible. However, childhood was a different story. There was no diagnosis, then no comprehension of what I was going through. My parents, both high-achieving academics, expected nothing less than excellence. Harper naturally met these expectations, making my difficulties seem even more pronounced. I was often seen as the problematic child, not trying hard enough or achieving enough. My parents' comparisons with Harper, their golden child, only widened the gap between us and deepened my feelings of inadequacy. Harper's presence didn't make things easier either. We attended the same school, and I constantly felt overshadowed and judged by her. If I failed to complete my homework on time or got into trouble, she didn't hesitate to criticize me. At home, she would report even minor transgressions to our parents, always trying to cement her position as the favored child. Unlike me, Harper had no friends, perhaps because of her know-it-all attitude and tendency to look down on others. After years of no contact, I unexpectedly ran into resistance from my family when I attended my grandfather's 77th birthday. It was a stark reminder of the strained relationships and unresolved issues from my past. Despite these challenges, understanding my ADHD has allowed me to reframe my past experiences and approach life with newfound clarity and resilience. Harper, who never tolerated any faults, unsurprisingly wasn't well-liked. She distanced herself from others and, instead of reflecting on her actions, she became more dismissive and arrogant. Despite her shortcomings, my parents idolized her. They never addressed her negative behavior or suggested she be more compassionate or modest. Instead, they glorified her, proclaiming her as the pinnacle of their achievements. They boasted about Harper to everyone: relatives, colleagues, neighbors, anyone willing to listen. They even threw lavish birthday parties for her, complete with elaborate decorations, numerous guests, and costly gifts, declaring that she deserved such adoration because she was the one good thing that resulted from their marriage. Imagine hearing your parents say that about your sibling, making you feel utterly insignificant by comparison. In stark contrast, my own birthdays were barely acknowledged, marked by the same unexciting gift every year: books. But not just any books, educational ones that seem to scream, "You need to try harder." When Harper graduated from a top university, it was a monumental celebration for my family. My parents were ecstatic, endlessly praising her accomplishments to anyone who would listen. However, when it was my turn to graduate, the atmosphere was entirely different. I was accepted into a less prestigious university, which, according to my parents, didn't compare to Harper's alma mater. The disappointment from my father was palpable. He bluntly expressed that he had no hopes for me and wished I would just disappear from their lives, too ashamed to even acknowledge my college choice to our relatives. Those crushing words made me feel disowned, a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. My parents labeled me the black sheep, regretfully stating that raising me had been a waste of their effort. Even Harper shared her disdain for my college choice, insinuating that while she didn't expect me to match her academic success, I should have at least put in more effort. Her words hurt deeply. It was clear that my best was never enough for them. This constant negativity and dismissal hurt so much that I decided then and there to cut ties. If they truly believed I was unworthy of their time or affection, I would spare them the burden. I resolved to forge my own path, however challenging it might be, and never look back. Starting college marked a new chapter for me, though not without its hurdles. I had to take out student loans and get a part-time job to make ends meet. Balancing work, studies, and managing my ADHD was no easy feat. There were moments when the struggle felt overwhelming, but I was determined to overcome them and build a life where I was valued and appreciated on my own terms. There was a time when I felt on the verge of giving up, but I chose to persevere. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by friends who saw the best in me. They recognized my potential rather than my shortcomings, providing support and encouragement. With their support, along with effective medication for managing my ADHD, I began to craft a life filled with meaning and satisfaction. Today, I work as a data scientist at a leading global corporation, a role I've held for the past 7 years. However, an exception arose with my grandfather's 77th birthday celebration. He personally reached out, requesting my presence, and I found it hard to refuse him, given the affection he always showed me. Despite my reservations, I decided to attend the celebration. Upon arrival, I saw my parents were already there. I had braced myself for this possibility, but encountering them still revived some old, unsettling emotions. Nonetheless, I reminded myself of the reason for my visit. It was to honor my grandfather on his special day. After a discreet but warm greeting to my grandfather, I mingled with other family members, engaging in light conversations and polite exchanges. Many were genuinely pleased to see me after such a long time. Eventually, my parents noticed me. Their shock was evident, and almost immediately, my father approached to speak with me privately. He led me to a secluded part of the venue, away from prying eyes. The conversation that ensued was devoid of warmth. My parents expressed their displeasure at seeing me. My father's first question was pointed and harsh. "What are you doing here?" I calmly explained that I had come solely at my grandfather's request to celebrate his milestone birthday. This did not satisfy my mother, who questioned why I had skipped previous family gatherings but chose to attend this one. She insinuated that perhaps I was seeking reconciliation after all these years. Her words were provoking, but I maintained my composure, asserting that I had no intention of reconnecting with them. I made it clear that I was here for my grandfather, and if they found my presence objectionable, they were welcome to ignore me as they had done before, allowing me to enjoy the company of the rest of the family. My mom once argued that they would rather ignore my presence, but feared that it might prompt others to ask uncomfortable questions about me. She believed that I should have given them a warning so they could better manage any inquiries about my life. To her, it felt as if I had committed some grievous offense. I calmly explained that if questioned, they could simply share that I was thriving, having established a successful career and a supportive relationship. However, my dad was skeptical. He bluntly questioned the authenticity of my success, pointing out my lack of a prestigious college degree, which sparked a surge of anger within me. Despite the many hurdles I had overcome to build my career, his dismissive comment felt like a dismissal of all my efforts. Before I could respond, he gestured towards the door and coldly suggested that I leave to prevent tarnishing their social image, as if I were still a failure. Shocked by their harshness, I couldn't understand how they could be so concerned with appearances at an event that wasn't even centered on them. Their words hurt deeply, reinforcing the notion that they still viewed me as a mere child under their control. Yet I was no longer that person. If they were genuinely worried about public perception, I resolved to make them face the consequences of their actions. Without hesitating, I rejoined the other guests. My grandfather immediately sensed my distress and approached me. I confided in him about how my parents wanted to expel me from the party and their ongoing embarrassment about my presence. Enraged, he assured me they had no right to treat me that way or to spoil his birthday with their drama. Though he offered to speak to them, I knew it wouldn't change their attitudes. What we needed was to confront the situation openly. Garnering courage, I clinked my glass to capture everyone's attention. The room quieted, all eyes on me. After congratulating my grandfather on his remarkable milestone and expressing my gratitude for being part of the celebration, I shifted the mood to address the family. I openly discussed why I had been absent from family gatherings for nearly a decade. The reason was stark. My parents had consistently belittled me, treating me as an inferior burden. I detailed their long-standing criticism and how they labeled me a failure because I did not meet their lofty expectations. I recounted my journey through college, supporting myself with loans and part-time jobs without their aid, emphasizing my resilience and independence. In sharing my story, I hope not only to clear the air but also to mend the strained ties within our family by shedding light on the truth. This moment wasn't just about confronting past grievances, but about seeking a path forward, united by understanding and mutual respect. Having put in a lot of effort to establish my own life, it had been noticeable that not once had my family checked in on me. As I addressed the silent room, I could see some attendees exchanging uneasy looks while others fixed their gaze on my parents, who appeared completely shocked. My mother turned pale as I spoke, and my father looked visibly angry. But I didn't hold back. I openly shared how, throughout my childhood, my parents showed a clear preference for my sister, Harper, lavishing her with affection, attention, and opportunities, while I was always considered the outsider. I talked about how their constant comparisons and dismissive attitude towards my struggles with ADHD, which they labeled as mere laziness, deeply alienated me. They failed to offer the understanding or support I needed. I continued, explaining that now, as a self-made adult, I held no expectations of their acceptance. Yet, I was astounded that they even criticized my presence at my own grandfather's birthday party, an event I was personally invited to by the man of honor himself. It was both absurd and painful, and I wanted everyone to understand the extent of their unreasonable behavior. I clarified that my absence at previous family gatherings wasn't out of rudeness or distance. It was a form of self-protection, a way to heal from years of emotional neglect. However, today, I attended for my grandfather's sake, Yet my parents wanted to exclude me, claiming that discussing me was embarrassing for them. It was high time I addressed this publicly to put an end to the secrecy. With my speech, I declared that I was finished with hiding and letting them portray me as the problem. From now on, I intended to be present at every family function, regardless of my parents' preferences. As I concluded, my grandfather and a few of my cousins cheered and came over to embrace me, showing their support. In contrast, my parents were left speechless, unable to defend their actions, now that the truth was out in the open. They soon left the party, clearly embarrassed, while I stayed, enjoying the company of my cousins and other relatives. In the days following, many relatives reached out, offering their support and praising me for my bravery in standing up for myself. Some apologized for not seeing the signs earlier or for not reaching out sooner. Although not everyone agreed with my approach, suggesting it might have been better kept private, the overwhelming response has been supportive. I'm heartened by how many people have shown concern for my well-being. After years of feeling marginalized, that moment at the party was a release of suppressed emotions and truths. I have no regrets about defending myself and letting everyone hear my side of the story. As for Harper, she wasn't at the party, but the support from other family members has been comforting. She was away on a business trip, which is why our paths didn't cross, and frankly, I was thankful for that. If she had been around, she might have joined my parents in their harsh criticism of me. Harper has always had a knack for finding fault with me and making derogatory remarks, so her not being there felt like a small blessing. Some of you have wondered why I didn't turn to other relatives for financial support when my parents refused to help me during those challenging times. Back then, I was young, naive, and heavily influenced by their harsh words. My parents and Harper often ridiculed me, dismissing my educational choices and undermining my self-worth. I took their words to heart and believed that other family members would share their harsh views. The idea of exposing our family issues to others and possibly facing more rejection was terrifying. Besides, I was determined to be independent and resolved to manage on my own, no matter the struggle. Regarding my grandfather, I must highlight that he has always supported me emotionally. Although he wasn't financially stable enough to assist with my college fees, his emotional support was crucial. He always believed in me and understood the strained dynamics between me and my parents. He's fully aware of everything that has happened and has never judged me for distancing myself from my parents. I am immensely thankful to him for allowing me to speak at his event and for his steadfast support when I chose to reveal the truth about my parents. Since that revealing moment at the party, I've been told by several relatives that my parents are now facing significant criticism. People were appalled to learn about their mistreatment of me. Many relatives were unaware of the full extent of their actions, as my parents had always portrayed me as the problem child. They had crafted this narrative to maintain their image, while concealing their detrimental behavior. Now that the truth has surfaced, their false front is beginning to fall apart. I hope this public exposure prompts them to reevaluate their actions and possibly change. Regardless of their response, I've made peace with the situation and feel a sense of closure. Furthermore, Harper contacted me this week. She had heard from our parents and other relatives about the events at the party. When I answered her call, she immediately began scolding me, enraged by my decision to publicly disclose our family issues. She believed I was merely stirring up drama and acting selfishly. She argued that I had no right to air our family's issues publicly, especially since my parents had been trying to move past their past behaviors and live peacefully without me. She insisted that I was disrupting the delicate peace that had been established and urged me to let go and move on, rather than dredging up the past. Why are you asking for an apology from them? Just because they didn't finance your education? Because they were disappointed in you? Or because they always pushed you to excel, always seeking the best for you? Harper's words made me scoff. She had a history of siding with our parents, dismissing how they mistreated me as mere family drama. It was simpler for her to ignore the real issues than to acknowledge them. I tried to make her see that pushing someone to improve doesn't involve years of humiliation or mockery when expectations aren't met. What I longed for from our parents wasn't intensified pressure, but their support, affection, and understanding. I wish they had seen me for who I am, guiding me through my struggles instead of scolding me for not meeting their lofty standards. I wasn't seeking a flawless childhood, merely parents who supported and understood me rather than viewing me as a letdown. Harper countered by suggesting that if I felt this way, I should have resolved these feelings with them privately rather than airing our dirty laundry publicly. She argued that by doing so, I had undermined our parents' years of hard work and their public image, rendering their achievements insignificant amid the current gossip about their neglect. Harper implied that my actions were driven by bitterness, as if to suggest that I hadn't achieved anything significant in life and was lashing out because, deep down, I knew they were right about me. I just laughed off her accusations and calmly explained that despite the difficulties our parents and she had put me through, I had carved out a successful career for myself. My decision to speak out was about reclaiming my story after years of being silenced and marginalized. It wasn't to flaunt my successes or to tarnish their reputation, but to stand up for myself and reveal the truth of what had occurred behind closed doors. Harper persisted, arguing that I owed our parents a public apology to protect their reputation. But I firmly told her I would never apologize to those who had wronged me. I reminded Harper that she needed to see the situation for what it was and stop defending those who had treated me poorly all my life. To further irk her, I declared that I would attend every family event from now on. If they dare to challenge me again, I would continue to speak out. I refused to let their toxic behavior dictate my relationships with the rest of the family. I was well within my rights to reconnect with my relatives and foster relationships with my family. My sister accused me of doing this solely to upset our parents and insisted that I revert to the isolation I had maintained over the years. Feeling frustrated, it was clear that my sister and I were not going to agree. I firmly told her to focus on her own life and to stop meddling in mine. I had no patience left for her defenses or justifications of our parents' actions. Consequently, I ended our conversation and blocked her number. I owed her no explanations or apologies. In the past 4 months, I've made significant strides in becoming more involved with my family. I make sure to attend every family event, from significant celebrations like birthdays and anniversaries to casual get-togethers. I've also been visiting my grandfather regularly, keeping up with his well-being. Additionally, I've been spending more time with my cousins, joining them for meals, movies, or just fun activities. It's been rewarding to strengthen these ties and create new memories. Last month marked a pivotal moment when my mom reached out with an apology via email, as she and my dad are blocked on my phone. She explained that therapy and reflection had opened her eyes to past injustices, particularly how they might have favored my sister over me, attributing this to the strict academic expectations rooted in their upbringing. She acknowledged that my revelation of having ADHD at our granddad's party was a wake-up call. She had since educated herself about ADHD and regretted not supporting me better when I was younger. In her email, she mentioned quietly keeping up with my career via LinkedIn and expressed pride in my accomplishments. She noted that my dad also recognized my achievements, but given his nature, it might take him more time to reach out personally. While I was taken aback by her comprehensive and heartfelt message, I'm still processing it all. Despite her newfound understanding, I'm not yet ready to forgive and unblock my parents. My childhood could have been markedly different if this understanding had been present earlier. Back in my college days, I attended the same university as my future husband, Daniel, and his older brother, John. John was a year ahead of us, and interestingly, my initial connection to Daniel came through John. I harbored a small, harmless crush on John, who was quite popular and known for his charming, playboy ways. He was attractive and always the center of attention, which caught my eye along with many others. Despite his allure, I was aware of his reputation and decided against becoming just another fling. My self-respect was too important. Of course, my best friend discovered my crush and playfully teased me about it, making it a well-known fact among our circle. I believe John eventually caught wind of this too. John's approach towards me changed after that. He started flirting openly during group gatherings. He would find ways to be near me, make physical contact, and even got my number to send flattering texts labeling me as girlfriend material. Though his attention was flattering, I remained wary of his intentions, remembering his reputation. John often expressed, particularly after a few drinks, that he wasn't ready for a serious relationship, preferring to enjoy his freedom. This was a red flag that reinforced my skepticism about his sincerity. Meanwhile, I was a focused student, frequently found in the library. John began appearing there too, under various pretenses, clearly attempting to spend time with me. His persistence bordered on annoying since I wasn't encouraging his advances. On 2 occasions, he wrote me notes expressing his feelings, which were quite intense. Yet, whenever I confronted him directly, he would retract his statements, apologizing and admitting he didn't want to make me uncomfortable. His inconsistent behavior left me confused and unsure, as I lacked much experience in relationships. The situation escalated around my birthday, close to New Year's. John sent a heartfelt message declaring his love and his desire for a serious relationship, a stark contrast to his usual demeanor. I was so taken aback that I questioned his sincerity. He affirmed his feelings and even mentioned plans to propose at a New Year's Eve party we were both set to attend. On New Year's Eve, I met John's brother, Daniel, for the first time at the party. Daniel was the antithesis of John, kind, slightly shy, and not seeking the spotlight. We struck up a conversation and immediately connected, marking the beginning of a relationship that would lead to us getting married. Years later, after Daniel and I were married, a peculiar incident occurred involving John. He discreetly placed a note saying, "I love you," in a gift, which I later found. Around the same time, while Daniel was recovering from a car accident, my mother-in-law suggested bizarrely that I should stay with John. This brought back all the mixed signals and confusion from the past, reminding me of the complexity of my earlier interactions with him. From the beginning, my connection with John was immediate and felt incredibly familiar, as though we had known each other for ages. However, during a particular party, John's behavior towards me shifted dramatically. He avoided me throughout the evening, refusing to make eye contact despite having recently expressed his intent to propose. This left me puzzled and somewhat relieved, as I had already lost interest in him. The situation became clear later that evening when I caught John kissing another friend in the kitchen. This act confirmed my doubts about his sincerity. When he noticed me, he looked guilty and began to apologize. I asked to speak with him privately, and in a quiet room, I firmly told him it was best for us to see other people, expressing that my feelings for him had changed. John reacted poorly, accusing me of leading him on, but I maintained my stance, emphasizing that we were never officially together. I ended the conversation and walked away, feeling liberated from the weight of our undefined relationship. The day after the party, I received a text from Daniel, a mutual friend who had asked for my number. He invited me out, and after I accepted, I made sure to explain the entire ordeal with John to ensure there were no secrets between us. Daniel's understanding and mature response highlighted the stark contrast between him and John. Daniel and I began dating, quickly falling deeply in love in a way that was profoundly different from any superficial feelings I had for John. He became not just my partner, but my best friend. However, John's reaction to our relationship was chilly and disruptive. Despite his ongoing bachelor lifestyle, he frequently intruded on our plans, whether by inviting himself to concerts or turning up at our home during our private moments. As Daniel and I grew more serious, even discussing living together, John's interference escalated. He tried to dissuade Daniel from committing to me, suggesting he pursue other women, a suggestion that Daniel relayed to me, increasing my disdain for John's attempts to undermine our relationship. After 2 years together, Daniel and I decided to move in together, a step that excited both of us. John, on the other hand, was not pleased and even suggested he move in with us, an idea I immediately vetoed. Through all the ups and downs, my relationship with Daniel strengthened, built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine love, proving to be the best outcome I could have ever imagined. The situation became quite tense when John began spreading rumors about me to our mutual friends. He accused me of interfering in his friendship with Daniel and claimed I was controlling Daniel's life. Luckily, Daniel immediately dismissed these accusations when he found out. However, John's troubling behavior only worsened over time. The most alarming incident occurred during a night out at a bowling alley with friends. After receiving a compliment on my shirt from someone, John deliberately spilled his drink on me. He apologized afterward, but then made a highly inappropriate comment about my attire, suggesting I shouldn't wear revealing clothes around him. This incident was disturbing, and it made me so uneasy that I even considered ending my relationship with Daniel to escape John's ongoing disruptions and creepy behavior. Daniel and I eventually had a serious talk about John's actions. For the first time, Daniel acknowledged that John's behavior was peculiar. Although he had overlooked it before, he now recognized it as problematic. We decided it was best to keep our distance from John for the sake of my well-being and our relationship. I opted out of any social gatherings John attended, a necessary move to maintain my peace of mind. Our friends noticed our withdrawal, and eventually, John heard about it too. He sent me a lengthy apology, claiming he was happy for Daniel and me, and promised to stop meddling. Surprisingly, he kept his word, and there was a period of calm. Daniel and I got married in a lovely ceremony, celebrating our love. However, even on our wedding day, there was a hint of discomfort when John, serving as the best man, mentioned his past feelings for me during his speech. He described it as a sacrifice for his brother, which the guests found endearing, but it left me feeling exposed and uncomfortable. Daniel didn't seem to mind, so I chose not to stir any trouble on such a special day. Later, as John turned 30, his family began pressuring him to settle down. Despite his good looks and stable career, John had never been in a serious relationship, which Daniel found odd. He tried discussing it with John, who simply shrugged it off. At a small birthday party Daniel threw for me, John presented me with a large, lavish gift, suggesting I open it later in private. This raised my suspicions, but I agreed. That night, Daniel and I discovered the gift was a heart-shaped box of chocolates with a diamond necklace in the center. Daniel was shocked, noting that it was the kind of gift one would give to a romantic partner, not his brother's wife. He speculated that perhaps John didn't understand appropriate gift-giving due to his lack of serious relationships, but his concern was evident. I decided to put the necklace away, trying to put the incident behind us. About a year later, while cleaning, I found the necklace again. It was a stark reminder of the complexities and ongoing challenges in our relationships with John, reinforcing the uneasy dynamics that occasionally surfaced despite our efforts to maintain harmony. I was idly playing with it when I discovered it could open. Inside, there was a hidden compartment containing a small folded note. The handwriting was unmistakably John's, and the message was simple yet shocking. I love you. That evening, feeling a mix of emotions, I showed the necklace and the note to Daniel. He reacted with surprise, then anger. We realized the seriousness of the situation and decided to involve his parents, who were equally stunned. His father was furious, while his mother attempted to justify it, but was quickly silenced. Daniel insisted on confronting John. The following day, we invited John to join us for lunch. During the meal, Daniel placed the note on the table, directly confronting John with it. John's initial panic was visible, but he quickly regained composure. He firmly stated that the note was intended for his girlfriend, Sophia, not me, explaining that he had bought similar necklaces for both of us and had mixed them up by accident. John's story seemed far-fetched, yet plausible, a bizarre mix-up. He provided details about Sophia and showed us photos that supported his claims, displaying their happiness together. This eased the tension, and we decided to put the incident behind us, laughing off the misunderstanding. However, things took a turn. John's marriage to Sophia ended this year due to mutual infidelity discovered through his activities on dating apps and her affair with a coworker. They divorced, citing incompatibility. John, now jobless and living with his parents, sank into depression. Despite Daniel's efforts to help him rebound, John's behavior around me became increasingly inappropriate, especially after a recent incident during a video game tutorial where his actions crossed a line, making me extremely uncomfortable. I had to ask Daniel to take me home, feeling uneasy about John's intentions once again. He was ready to confront John immediately, but I persuaded him not to, fearing it could exacerbate the situation. John was still living at home, and I worried a confrontation might lead to him being thrown out by his parents. Additionally, I was concerned that my mother-in-law might side with V and accuse me of stirring up trouble. Despite these concerns, I resolved to always stay cautious around John and avoid being alone with him. Then, an alarming incident occurred. Daniel was involved in a severe car accident. A truck rear-ended him during a lane change. The call from the hospital shook me to my core. I feared the worst. His family, including his parents, John, and both sets of in-laws, gathered at the hospital, showing genuine concern and support. To my surprise, John was notably attentive and helpful during this stressful time. As Daniel's recovery slowly progressed under strict visitation limits, I was there for him daily, trying to provide comfort through his favorite music and books. It meant everything to me that he was gradually getting better. However, John's behavior during his visits became increasingly troubling. He focused on me more than Daniel, often hugging me or touching me inappropriately, and made unsettling comments about being there for me if Daniel didn't make it. His mother seemed to encourage his behavior, adding to my discomfort. During one of these visits, Daniel tried to lighten the mood with a joke about me being with his brothers if something happened to him, which only upset me further. Realizing his mistake, he apologized, and that's when I broke down and revealed everything to him. I explained how John's actions were crossing boundaries and how I felt that his mother was possibly enabling his inappropriate behavior. Daniel was deeply apologetic and understood the emotional toll this had taken on me. He admitted he'd suspected John's feelings for me, but had given him the benefit of the doubt. It was a relief to be fully understood by Daniel, and together, we decided it was time to address the issue more directly. We planned to subtly expose John and his mother's enabling behavior. Our strategy involved asking my mother-in-law for financial assistance with the medical bills to test her impartiality towards her sons. This plan was aimed at bringing the underlying issues to light and ensuring everyone's true intentions were revealed. She always seemed willing to lend a hand without any reservations, yet any hesitation, excuses, or conditions on her help raised suspicions about her motives. I had agreed to a plan, and the following day I met with my mother-in-law at the hospital cafeteria. I opened up about the overwhelming medical bills and the financial burden they were imposing on us. To my relief, she immediately offered to cover the expenses without any conditions. However, my relief was short-lived. She then suggested that I should move in with her and her husband and John while Daniel, my husband, was recovering. She argued that it wasn't good for me to be alone in such trying times and hinted that her son John was feeling lonely and could use my company. Her words left a bitter taste in my mouth. It was clear that her offer was not just about helping, but manipulating the situation to foster closeness between John and me, completely ignoring how inappropriate it was. She continued, oblivious to the discomfort she was causing, suggesting that John and I could develop a friendship due to our similarities. She even hinted that I could be with John until Daniel recovered. Shocked, I stood up from the table, thanked her for her honesty, and disclosed that I had been recording our conversation. I informed her that I intended to share the recording with Daniel, exposing her scheme. Her face turned pale, and she began to panic, attempting to retract her words. She defended herself by saying that falling in love was not a crime and claimed she could recognize when her sons were in love, insisting that John deserved me because he loved me first. Her entitlement and delusion were astounding. I told her I would inform her husband of her actions and ensure John was removed from the house. I walked away, refusing to engage further, feeling both disgusted and heartbroken. Despite having the evidence, I was anxious and scared about discussing this with Daniel. I noticed some comments suggesting that I might have encouraged John's feelings in some way. I want to clarify that this is not the case. My brief initial interest in John during college was just a fleeting crush. When I realized he wasn't right for me and was not sincere, I told him clearly that I was not interested. Yes, I ended up falling for his brother Daniel, which might not seem ideal, but it happened and I shouldn't be faulted for it. Daniel is the man I married, have stayed loyal to, and hope to continue building a future with. Our family has been through a whirlwind of events recently. I deeply love my husband, Daniel, and there has never been a moment where I wanted to be with anyone else, especially John initially. John's charm was merely surface level, and my feelings never went beyond that. Some people were curious about our financial situation during a recent health scare. Contrary to what we made it seem, Daniel and I are both securely employed with excellent health insurance, so we didn't need financial assistance for medical bills. The request for help was actually a strategic move to gauge my mother-in-law's reaction. Her response confirmed my suspicions. She was aware of and even supportive of John's inappropriate feelings towards me, which she had been encouraging all along. This revelation left me feeling betrayed and unsafe around her, knowing she has always favored John and fostered his unacceptable behavior. I chose to wait until he was stronger because I didn't want to add to his stress during recovery. At first, he found the scenario laughably absurd. However, his amusement quickly turned to shock and pain when I played the recording. He was heartbroken to hear his own mother's words and couldn't fathom why she would engage in such manipulative tactics. Daniel wondered why I hadn't told him sooner, but he understood when I explained my concerns about his health. We both agreed it was essential to bring his father into the conversation. Daniel was disgusted by his mother's actions and deeply disappointed in John. It was a relief to see that Daniel and I were united in our feelings. Feeling anxious yet resolute, we spoke with Daniel's father the following day. His initial reaction was one of regret and an immediate apology to me. The whole situation was emotionally taxing, but it was crucial to address the issues that had come to light. In just a week, the dynamics within our family and between my mother-in-law and John changed dramatically. Daniel's conversation with his father set off a series of heartfelt discussions and decisions, turning our lives and relationships inside out. He told me he saw me as his own daughter just as much as Daniel was his son, and that I should never have felt any hesitation in approaching him with my worries. He offered an apology for John's behavior and assured me that John would not trouble me again. His support and understanding during this time were incredibly meaningful to me. After our conversation, my father-in-law wasted no time in confronting John, who had been hiding in his room. My father-in-law, a tall and imposing figure at 6 feet 2 inches and an professor, must have been quite intimidating as he yelled at John to get out of the house, effectively disowning him for his unacceptable actions. Despite attempts by my mother-in-law to defend John, my father-in-law sharply criticized her, expressing his disappointment and disgust over her complicity in John's behavior. He accused her of failing in her role as a mother by letting John act in such a reprehensible manner. The situation escalated further when he demanded that both she and John leave the home. Now, they find themselves living in a motel, with both reaching out to me, blaming me for their predicament and the rupture with my father-in-law. My mother-in-law has been pleading for a reconciliation, but my father-in-law has set a firm condition. She must undergo therapy to understand her misjudgments, and only if she shows real remorse will he consider the possibility of her return. John also tried to apologize to Daniel, seeking forgiveness, but Daniel, deeply disappointed, told John he was ashamed to consider him a brother and warned him against contacting me again, hinting at potential legal repercussions for harassment. This whole ordeal has become known among our extended family, with varying reactions of shock and acknowledgement of past favoritism toward John by my mother-in-law. Daniel's family has rallied around us, strongly condemning the actions of my mother-in-law, who is now facing social ostracism. I've shared the entire situation with my own parents, who were equally appalled. Now, all I desire is to move past this turmoil and enjoy a peaceful life with my loving husband. I am deeply thankful for my father-in-law's belief in us and his decisive actions. Moving forward without John and my mother-in-law feels like the right step for our happiness and future. I'm looking forward to continuing my life, peacefully and joyfully, with my wonderful husband by my side. Growing up, my sister Layla and I had a complex relationship. As the older sibling, I often felt burdened with responsibilities that seemed unfair. Our parents, overwhelmed by their careers, relied heavily on me to look after Layla, helping with her homework, accompanying her to school, and even entertaining her when they were too tired. Despite their expectations, Layla often made my role challenging with her insensitivity and blunt remarks that could hurt others, including my friends. One vivid memory was when Layla accompanied me to my best friend's 11th birthday party. Although we had all brought thoughtful gifts, Layla laughed and called a sentimental present for my friend's grandparents dumb. Her lack of tact not only embarrassed me but also deeply upset my friend, tarnishing the celebration. I felt compelled to apologize and remove Layla from the situation, embarrassed by her behavior. Over the years, I tried discussing Layla's behavior with our parents, hoping they might address her social missteps. Instead, they dismissed my concerns, advising me to be more understanding and not to mind her behavior. This response was disheartening, as it seemed they were more interested in excusing her actions than in fostering genuine sibling harmony. This pattern persisted into adulthood, culminating when Layla chose not to invite me to her wedding, but invited all my friends instead. In a show of solidarity, my friends arrived in wildly eccentric outfits, a silent protest against her decision to exclude me. It was a bittersweet gesture, highlighting the complexities of our familial ties. Reflecting on these experiences, I realized that my rebellion in later years, insisting on personal space and refusing to always include Layla, was not just about seeking independence but also about establishing boundaries that our parents never did. Layla's lack of friends and her isolation at school lunches were consequences of her own harsh words, yet my parents continued to insist I include her, further straining our relationship. In hindsight, the lack of guidance from our parents in navigating our relationship with empathy and respect has left its mark. It taught me the importance of boundaries and the value of understanding in all relationships, even if it came at the cost of difficult family dynamics. Growing up, I found it really challenging to connect with my younger sister, Layla, whom I often had to include in my social plans because of our parents' insistence. This tension peaked when it was time for college. Despite my parents' wishes for me to attend a local university, my determination paid off, and I secured a scholarship to a prestigious institution far from home. Overjoyed by the opportunity to finally experience independence, I didn't hesitate. I moved into my dorm and embraced my new life, seldom returning home even during holidays. The distance felt liberating. During this time, I still maintained connections with my high school friends through a Facebook group where I reluctantly added Layla. She occasionally reached out to the group, seeking company, but unfortunately no one responded. Most of my friends had moved away for college, similar to myself, and those who hadn't showed little interest in reconnecting with her. It became clear that their previous interactions with Layla were out of obligation rather than genuine interest, particularly because of her sometimes harsh remarks. As my college days neared their end, I returned home for a school reunion, eager to reconnect with old classmates. When Layla expressed a desire to join me, hoping to mingle with my friends, I had to set firm boundaries. I explained that it was important for her to forge her own friendships rather than rely on mine. This assertion was difficult but necessary to maintain my independence and allow her the space to grow separately. The reunion itself was a joyful affair filled with nostalgia and laughter, a reminder of my formative years and the personal growth that followed. While the situation with Layla remained complicated, I cherished the freedom and the new life I had built, far from the constraints of my earlier years. During our joyful reunion lunch, the atmosphere shifted unexpectedly when Layla walked into the restaurant, uninvited. I was taken aback and a bit annoyed, especially since I had previously made it clear to her that she needed to stop meddling in my affairs. Despite this, there she was, striding towards our table, cheerfully exclaiming how much she had missed everyone. The sudden silence that enveloped the group was telling. Confusion was written on everyone's faces as they hadn't anticipated her arrival. Layla, seemingly unaware of the awkwardness she had caused, pulled up a chair and began reminiscing about old times with everyone. Observing this, I felt a mix of irritation and disbelief at her audacity to casually interact with my friends at an event to which she wasn't invited. My friends, ever polite, engaged in small talk with her, but it was clear from their expressions that the situation was making them uncomfortable, and it stifled our conversation. After we finished eating, I pulled Layla aside to suggest she should head home, but she brushed off my concerns, claiming it wasn't a big deal and reminding me that these were her friends too. Her indifferent attitude was grating on me, and in that moment, I decided it was time to clear the air. I brought her back to the group and openly asked for their thoughts on her uninvited presence, hoping to make her realize how inappropriate her behavior was. To my relief, several friends supported my viewpoint, expressing their discomfort due to their lack of closeness with Layla. One of my closest school friends diplomatically suggested to Layla that while they were open to meeting with her another time, today was about reconnecting with old classmates. Layla's face showed embarrassment as she processed their feedback, and although I felt a twinge of satisfaction seeing her learn a lesson about respecting boundaries, she shot me an angry look, clearly upset at the situation. Later that night, after the reunion, my parents confronted me. They were upset about how I had handled things, feeling I had embarrassed Layla. I tried explaining that her presence was unwelcome and intrusive, but they insisted I should be more understanding, pointing out how Layla often struggled to make friends and was excited to see mine, who had always been kind to her. I countered that while our friends were polite to her because of me, it didn't mean they wanted to extend their friendship further. This argument escalated when Layla, overhearing us, claimed that everyone liked her and accused me of trying to monopolize my friends. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity, reminding her of the years of minimal interaction she had with them, despite her attempts to connect. Layla seemed hurt by this and tried to justify that everyone was just busy, but I reiterated that their actions spoke louder than words. It was clear that hanging out with Layla was more of a social convenience than genuine friendship for most people. Even though it might have sounded harsh, I felt compelled to tell Layla the truth about her relationships. When I spoke my mind, my dad accused me of being selfish and demanded I apologize to Layla. However, I stood firm on my position, especially since Layla had intrusively disrupted our family reunion, uninvited and unwelcome. This confrontation was the final blow that ended my friendship with Layla entirely. From that moment, our interactions became cold and distant, limited to awkward exchanges during occasional holiday gatherings. Years later, as I planned my wedding, my parents insisted I invite Layla to avoid family drama. They even pushed for her to be a bridesmaid, but I stood my ground, threatening to withdraw her invitation if pressured further. Thankfully, my partner was incredibly supportive. He understood the strained dynamics between Layla and me and respected my decision to keep her involvement in our wedding minimal. Over time, I maintained a polite but distant relationship with Layla. Recently, Layla got married to Dee, a man 16 years her senior, whom she met while working at a restaurant. Layla, who had struggled with job stability, viewed marriage as a new beginning. Although we weren't close, I was taken aback when I learned through family that Layla had sent virtual wedding invitations to all my friends via an old Facebook group. Surprisingly, I hadn't received an invite myself. Some friends reached out, puzzled about whether I would be attending. When I explained my non-invitation, they were shocked that Layla had invited them, but not me. Their surprise turned to indignation, feeling it rude and inappropriate for Layla to invite them, almost strangers to her, while excluding me, who had always looked out for her. This sentiment spread quickly among my circle, highlighting the perceived intentional snub. Confronting my parents, I reminded them of how they had compelled me to include Layla in my wedding for the sake of family unity. Yet, when the roles were reversed, they defended Layla's selective guest list as her prerogative. Feeling betrayed, I pointed out her public exclusion of me while including my friends, which only reinforced the divide between us. My parents, sticking by her side as usual, argued that those were her friends too, and she would be happy if they attended. Realizing that further discussion was futile, I chose to drop the subject. On the day of Layla's wedding, I reflected on the complex layers of our relationship, recognizing that some family dynamics are too entrenched to change. Yesterday was an eventful day for me. I spent it at the beach with my husband and our son, partner, to shake off a mild upset I was feeling. To fully enjoy our time, I turned off my phone, embracing a break from technology. Upon returning home, I was overwhelmed by a barrage of messages and calls from my family. My sister, Layla, sent a particularly striking message with a photo attached, accusing me of ruining her day and declaring she'd never forgive me. The photo showed several of my friends at what was apparently her wedding, dressed in outrageously flamboyant attire, including floor-length multicolored gowns and extravagant accessories like boas and summer hats. The scene resembled a costume party more than a wedding ceremony, and despite the confusion, I couldn't help but find the humor in their absurd outfits. Layla called, furious, accusing me of sabotaging her wedding by influencing our friend's choice of attire out of jealousy. Despite my assurances of innocence, she wouldn't hear it. My parents echoed her sentiments, expressing their disappointment in me, which I found utterly baffling as I had no role in my friend's fashion decisions. Feeling partly responsible since these friends knew I hadn't been invited to the wedding, I contemplated clearing up the misunderstanding. After discussing it with partner, I decided to first talk to my friends to get their side of the story. During a video call, they openly admitted to dressing audaciously as a subtle protest against Layla's tendency to impose herself into our group. They revealed that over the years, they had grown weary of her behavior, including speaking ill of me. They viewed the wedding as an opportunity to make a statement, given that there was no specific dress code in the invitation. I now realize the need to address this matter directly with my family. As the story has spread across social media, causing quite a stir, it's crucial that I clarify the situation and restore peace, although I understand the motivations behind my friend's actions and the complex dynamics within my family and friend group. She hoped that over time, boundaries would become clear, but that realization never dawned on her. The interruption at the reunion by her was a stark reminder of the constant irritation she posed. When it came to light that Layla had intentionally left me off the wedding guest list, my friends saw it as an opportune moment to make a point. They had long seen her as a bother rather than a true friend. Dressing eccentrically for her wedding was their method of expressing discontent and subtly telling Layla that their friendship was superficial. After hearing about how Layla blamed me for the wedding chaos, my friends were quick to apologize and clarify. They sent a collective message stating the whole plan was theirs, clearing me of any blame. I appreciated their support and explained that I understood their motives driven by frustration. My main goal was to make sure Layla and my parents understood the importance of respecting personal boundaries and that I was not the one at fault. Following our conversation, my friends issued an apology to Layla in our Facebook group, asserting that the idea was solely theirs and I was unaware. Layla has seen the message, but rather than responding, she accused me over a phone call of shirking responsibility and influencing our friends. She lamented that her wedding had turned into a joke, with embarrassing photos circulating online. I calmly explained that I couldn't be blamed for their choice of attire, especially since I wasn't invited to the wedding. Despite my friend's admission of planning without my involvement, Layla refused to accept any explanation that didn't fit her narrative, so I ended the call swiftly. My husband thought my parents might help resolve the issue, but I doubted it given Layla's steadfastness in her beliefs. Nevertheless, I decided to discuss it with them over the weekend. As anticipated, speaking with my parents did not help and possibly made things worse. They surprisingly blamed me, suggesting I should have managed my friends better, despite my insistence that I was unaware of their plans. Once again, they took Layla's side, leaving me disappointed and further from a resolution. I should have mentioned to Layla about the dynamics with my friends earlier. I was baffled and explained to them that I wasn't involved in their plans and that everything had unfolded without my input. Despite this, my parents, particularly G, refused to accept my innocence, leaving me feeling deeply frustrated and misunderstood. It dawned on me that resolving this conflict with my family was going to be far tougher than I had anticipated. The tension between Layla and myself, along with my parents' consistent favoritism towards her, seemed to obscure any possibility of reaching a fair resolution. During a crucial family discussion, partner, who accompanied me, defended me vigorously. He confronted my parents, asserting that I was not the type to betray anyone, especially not my own sister. He reminded them that during the incident at Xi's wedding, we were elsewhere because we hadn't been invited, completely unaware of the events transpiring there. He reasoned that it was unjust for my family to blame me without any concrete proof. My mother argued that I might have influenced my friends' inappropriate actions, given that I had shared with them my feelings about not being invited. However, partner countered, pointing out that my acceptance of the situation meant that the choices my friends made were their own, not mine. Seeing that my parents were unmoved, I expressed that continuing the conversation was pointless if they were set in their disbelief. Over the years, I had always listened to them and looked after Layla, but I was exhausted from being their scapegoat. I declared my decision to sever ties with Layla permanently, which caused a stir, but my father intervened to calm my mother. With that, partner and I decided it was best to leave and distance ourselves from the situation, hoping that time might soften their stance and help them see the truth. Unfortunately, they have yet to reach out, indicating they might continue to uphold their biased views. It's disheartening to see them favor Layla despite my consistent support for her. I don't know what lies ahead, but if my parents choose to side with her, I must respect their decision, even though it's disappointing. For now, Layla remains blocked, and I intend to keep it that way. Over the months, my parents occasionally tried to reconnect, not to apologize or address their past actions, but as if nothing had happened. I soon realized their attempts were likely driven by a desire to maintain a relationship with my son, their only grandchild. I've decisively cut off contact to protect him from potentially experiencing what I went through. Meanwhile, partner and I have focused on building our lives together, finding comfort in the support we provide each other. Partner has been incredibly supportive, understanding how difficult it was for me to distance myself from my parents. We're planning a vacation with our son for the upcoming holiday season. I ended my marriage the day after our wedding because my husband pushed my face into our wedding cake, despite my explicit request not to do so. Following this, his family accused me of overreacting, which has left me feeling increasingly isolated and unsure of myself, as if I might be at fault. I'm reaching out because I need some clarity on this matter, as the whole situation has been deeply troubling for me. I met Daniel 4 years ago at my cousin's birthday celebration. He was charismatic and humorous, and we connected instantly. We began dating soon after, and our relationship progressed quickly. Daniel was always the center of attention, known for his humor and ability to make everyone feel at ease, a trait I initially adored. About 4 years into our relationship, Daniel proposed during a simple yet romantic getaway to a quaint beach town. Overwhelmed with joy, I immediately accepted, eager to plan our life together. However, in retrospect, I realized there were warning signs I overlooked. Daniel often took his jokes too far. For instance, at a friend's birthday, he smashed his own face into the cake, which, while it made others laugh, clearly embarrassed the birthday celebrant. Another time, he switched his mother's sugar with salt, ruining a batch of cookies she was baking for a church event. Although these incidents seemed minor and he was apologetic whenever someone was genuinely upset, I brushed them off, believing he meant no harm and was simply misguided in his attempts to be funny. As our wedding approached, I noticed Daniel's fascination with prank videos, particularly those involving brides being humiliated, like having their faces smashed into cakes. He found these videos hilarious, but I did not share his amusement. I made it clear to him that I wanted no such pranks at our wedding, explaining that I had invested considerably in my appearance and, more importantly, I viewed such actions as a poor foundation for our marriage. Although he reassured me by dismissing the idea of pranks and jokingly calling me uptight, I felt uneasy, especially as he began acting suspiciously, like abruptly ending phone calls whenever I entered the room. Despite these red flags, I hoped for the best, but the wedding day proved my fears right. When Daniel smashed my face into the cake, it was not just the physical act that hurt, but the betrayal of my trust. His family's reaction only worsened my distress, making me question my feelings and my decision to leave him. This ordeal has been incredibly painful, and I find myself constantly revisiting the incident, trying to understand if my reaction was justified. I would appreciate any perspective on this, as I'm struggling to find peace and assurance in my decision amidst the overwhelming criticism from those I once trusted. As I entered the room, I initially thought that perhaps he had planned a surprise, possibly related to our honeymoon. Recently, he had shown unexpected interest in our wedding preparations, aspects he had previously ignored, like the choice of cake and the photo editor. Initially, I was thrilled that he was engaging with the wedding plans, which he had largely left up to me until then. It seemed he was finally taking our upcoming marriage to heart and wanted to be more actively involved, which genuinely pleased me. However, my happiness was soon tinged with suspicion due to peculiar remarks from his friends. During a dinner with his best friend girlfriend, repeatedly made cryptic comments about our wedding being one for the history books, exchanging secretive glances and smirks with his girlfriend. Whenever I questioned the humor, they would dismiss it as an inside joke and swiftly change the subject. This struck me as odd. Another unsettling moment occurred during our cake tasting. Daniel bombarded the coffee shop with unusual questions about the cake's durability and the weight the icing could bear, leaving the coffee visibly perplexed. Though unfamiliar with cakes, Daniel insisted on a specific type of thick frosting that would look good in photos. I was just pleased he was showing interest, so I went along with his requests. As the wedding approached, more red flags appeared. 5 weeks before the big day, Daniel's brother John, who was typically reserved and thoughtful, visited us. During a discussion about the wedding, Daniel hinted at having planned some special surprises, which seemed to irritate John, who responded with a probing stare that I couldn't decipher at the time. On the eve of our wedding, feeling uneasy, I confronted Daniel after our rehearsal dinner. I reminded him that any pranks that could potentially ruin my appearance or embarrass me would lead me to reconsider our relationship. He defensively assured me that I was being paranoid and accused me of spoiling the pre-wedding atmosphere with my suspicions. I felt guilty for doubting him, yet my instincts persisted. The wedding day itself was a whirlwind of excitement. Surrounded by my bridesmaids and my mother, I prepared for the day. My hairstyle expertly applied my makeup, and my dress, which I had meticulously saved for and fitted, felt perfect. Everyone complimented how stunning I looked, amplifying my eagerness to see Daniel's reaction. The ceremony was flawless. Daniel, dashing in his tuxedo, became emotional as I walked towards him, which moved me to tears. Our vows were exchanged, rings were placed, and our first kiss as a married couple felt enchanting. For a moment, I believed all my prior worries were unfounded. Then, the reception began wonderfully. We danced our first dance, enjoyed heartfelt speeches, despite friends' subtle jabs at Daniel's humor, and relished the exquisite food. However, as the evening progressed, the earlier unease lingered, reminding me to stay alert amidst the celebration. At that moment, the time had come for us to slice into our wedding cake, a magnificent 4-tiered masterpiece adorned with white fondant and delicate sugar blossoms that mirrored the ones in my bouquet. Our friends and family encircled us, eager to witness this traditional moment. The photo editor strategically positioned himself to capture every second of it. Daniel and I, with shared excitement, gripped the knife together to make our inaugural cut. The room filled with cheers, and I couldn't help but beam with joy, my cheeks aching from smiling so broadly. However, what unfolded next was completely unexpected. Just as I was about to offer Daniel a bite of the cake, I felt his hand on the back of my head. Before I had a chance to react, he pushed my face forcefully into the cake. It wasn't a gentle nudge, but a strong shove that buried my face deep into the icing. My makeup was a mess, my face and hair coated in frosting, and my beautiful dress was stained from top to bottom. The crowd's laughter erupted, led by Daniel, who seemed to find it hysterically funny. He slung his arm around my frosting-laden shoulder, proclaiming, "This is going to be our wedding photo," as if it was the highlight of the day. In shock, I managed to pull myself free from the cake's embrace. The laughter quickly faded when I turned to Daniel and slapped him across the face. His expression shifted from amusement to surprise, his cheek reddened from my strike. "What is wrong with you?" I exclaimed, my voice breaking as tears mingled with the frosting on my face. "I told you not to do this." Daniel's annoyance was evident as he dismissed my upset with a wave. "It's just a joke, babe. Calm down, you're making a scene." Overwhelmed, I pushed past the stunned guests and made my way to the bridal suite, locking myself in. Gazing into the mirror, I barely recognized the figure staring back, makeup smeared, hair ruined, and the once pristine dress now marred with a glaring frosting stain. I attempted to salvage what I could, but my efforts were futile. The anger coursing through me was palpable, exacerbated by Daniel's betrayal of a promise not to pull such a stunt. I had been sequestered in solitude for nearly 20 minutes when the sound of heated arguments from the reception hall reached my ears. Curiosity piqued despite the turmoil. I cracked the door slightly to listen. Amongst the voices, I recognized Daniel's normally reserved brother, John, shouting with a tone of disappointment and anger, "You never change. You promised her you wouldn't do this." 5 minutes passed, and the loud voices finally quieted down before a knock sounded at the door of the bridal suite. Standing there was John, his face a deep shade of red, visibly more disturbed than I had ever seen him. "Are you okay?" he inquired. Unable to trust myself to speak without bursting into tears again, I simply shook my head. "Daniel has something he wants to say to you," John continued, his jaw clenched tightly. Despite not wanting to face Daniel just then, I gave a reluctant nod. John left for a brief moment and returned with Daniel, who was avoiding eye contact, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Look at her, Daniel," John insisted. Daniel hesitantly lifted his eyes to meet mine. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, his apology lacking sincerity. "Look her in the eyes when you apologize," John commanded, his voice so stern it made me wince. Daniel straightened slightly and met my gaze more firmly. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't think he'd react like this. It was just supposed to be funny." His words rang hollow, clearly pressured by John's presence rather than a genuine sense of remorse. It dawned on me painfully that Daniel, the man I had committed to spend my life with, had deliberately crossed a boundary I had explicitly set. He had embarrassed me in front of our closest friends and family and failed to grasp why I was hurt. What struck me as odd was John's anger. Having known him as a calm and gentle person over the past 4 years, seeing him so infuriated and almost unrecognizable was unsettling. John insisted on escorting us back to the reception, which had turned eerily silent. Guests avoided eye contact, focusing intently on their plates or whispering about the spectacle they had just witnessed. Even the DJ's attempt at playing a cheerful tune couldn't lift the somber mood. I sat at our table, barely touching my food, avoiding everyone's gaze. Daniel tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, laughing and chatting with his friends, occasionally draping an arm around me, as if nothing was amiss. But nothing was right. I felt humiliated, angry, and profoundly betrayed by the person who was supposed to cherish and respect me the most. The rest of the evening was uncomfortably tense, and the reception concluded much earlier than anticipated. By 8:27 p.m., what was supposed to be a joyous celebration until midnight had fizzled out, with many guests excusing themselves early, likely sensing the strained atmosphere. Overwhelmed with emotion, I couldn't bear to be near Daniel. So, when John offered to drive me back to our apartment, I accepted without hesitation. Daniel seemed perturbed but offered no resistance, probably deterred by John's stern looks. The car ride began in silence. I stared out the window, fighting back tears, until John broke the quiet. "I'm sorry about what happened," he said softly, regret coloring his voice. "And I'm sorry for losing my temper. I don't usually. It's just that I've seen this too many times." Curious, I asked, "What do you mean?" John sighed deeply, a look of disappointment crossing his face. "Daniel's always been this way, using special occasions to embarrass others for his amusement. He thinks it's hilarious," he explained, revealing a side of Daniel I had never known. As John continued, I listened intently, the pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized were missing beginning to fall into place. From their childhood, Daniel always found ways to play pranks on John during significant occasions. For instance, during birthdays, Daniel would amusingly throw cake at Jono, even break his gifts. One memorable birthday, Daniel swapped out regular birthday candles for trick candles that wouldn't extinguish, leading to John's embarrassed frustration when Daniel pushed his face into the cake in front of all his friends. Similarly, during John's graduation, Daniel switched out John's gown for one significantly smaller just moments before the ceremony, causing John a last-minute panic to find a suitable replacement. Their parents overlooked these pranks, dismissing them as typical brotherly behavior. John admitted that he had tolerated Daniel's pranks throughout his life, but Daniel's antics during John's own wedding crossed the line. This incident made John see Daniel not merely as immature, but as someone who took pleasure in embarrassing others. John regretfully mentioned to me that he should have foreseen this behavior, as he was well aware of how Daniel treated people. He apologized for not warning me sooner, convinced Daniel would avoid such pranks on such a critical day. After the wedding prank, I found myself questioning if leaving Daniel was an overreaction. John was quick to support my feelings, emphasizing that I deserved better than someone who thrived on humiliation. John even offered his help if I chose to leave Daniel, ensuring me that I had his support. That evening, as I reflected alone, Daniel persistently texted me, oblivious to the impact of his actions. We were supposed to be celebrating our new marriage, yet here I was, contemplating its end over his thoughtless prank. The next morning, I decided to ask for a divorce. Daniel's incredulous response only added to my resolve, despite his family's barrage of messages painting me as the unreasonable one. But this wasn't just about a prank or a cake. It was about respect and trust, both of which Daniel had shattered. On what was meant to be one of the happiest days of our lives, he chose to ignore my clearly set boundaries for a cheap laugh. How could I trust him in the future? This breach of trust wasn't just a rough patch. It was a clear indication of what I might have to endure in the future. It became clear that it wasn't just about that one day, but about a pattern of disrespect that I could no longer overlook. The next day, Daniel returned home, but the damage was done, and my decision was firm. He behaved as if everything was perfectly fine, as if he fully expected me to just brush off my concerns. When I confronted him and expressed my seriousness about wanting a divorce, he reacted with anger. He accused me of being ungrateful, lacking a sense of humor, and ruining his life over what he dismissed as a mere prank. He made no effort to see things from my perspective. That night, I stayed at my best friend FFR's house because I couldn't bear to be around Daniel any longer. I confided everything to her, and unlike others, she truly understood why I was so upset. She agreed that the issue wasn't the prank itself, but rather Daniel's total disregard for my feelings and boundaries. Interestingly, Daniel's brother John was the only other person who seemed to grasp why I felt compelled to leave and supported my decision. I'm now considering a divorce, or possibly an annulment since we've been married for only 5 days. Someone mentioned that an annulment might be feasible, which resonated with me. Am I wrong for wanting to end my marriage because he shoved my face into our wedding cake, despite my clear objection? After posting about my situation online, I was overwhelmed by the supportive responses. Many suggested an annulment, which hadn't crossed my mind initially, likely because I've been so distressed. I spoke with a lawyer friend who confirmed that an annulment should be achievable given the short duration of our marriage and the circumstances. I haven't filed yet, but plan to do so within the next few weeks. This should be simpler than undergoing a full divorce, especially considering the brief nature of our marriage and how it already feels like a sham. Regarding the honeymoon, we were supposed to leave for a 7-week trip to Hawaii the day after the wedding, a trip we had been planning for months. Obviously, that didn't happen. Daniel even tried to persuade me that we should still go, arguing it was already paid for and could be a chance to reconcile. I couldn't fathom spending 4 weeks in close quarters with someone who had just humiliated me, so I told him to go alone if he wished. Now, we're also dealing with the hassle of securing refunds or credits for the trip. The day after my original post, I went to Daniel's apartment, technically our apartment, though it no longer feels like mine, to gather my belongings. I took up John's offer to help, which proved wise. I was apprehensive about encountering Daniel again, but having John there provided a sense of security. Upon our arrival, Daniel seemed taken aback to see John accompanying me. Daniel immediately reverted to insisting it was just a prank and claimed he hadn't intended to hurt me. He tried to hug me when I first entered, but I stepped back. He followed me around the apartment, pleading for us to work things out. However, I could only think about how he had already betrayed my trust and lied to my face, leaving me with no reason to believe anything he said. When Daniel realized John was there to assist rather than persuade me to stay, he lost his composure. His face turned an odd shade of red, and he began yelling, accusing John of turning me against him and attempting to steal me away. John remained calm, simply stating, "She made up her own mind. You did this to yourself." This led to a heated argument between them about past grievances, further solidifying my decision to leave. Back when we were younger, there were things brought up that I never knew existed. During one heated moment, Daniel callously told me to simply grow a pair and move on, since the incident was long in the past. This was rather ironic coming from someone who seemed to have never matured himself. At one point, Daniel even tried to prevent me from taking a box of my books, insisting that we needed to sit down and discuss matters like adults. The hypocrisy of him speaking about maturity after his recent actions was not lost on me. John intervened during our confrontation, firmly telling Daniel to step back, which only escalated the shouting. I kept packing my belongings amid their argument. Jay attempted to engage me directly, but John effectively shielded me, ensuring I could gather my things without further distress. It took roughly 5 hours to pack what I needed. I left quite a few items behind, thinking I could retrieve them later or simply replace them. Meanwhile, Daniel's behavior oscillated between apologies, anger, and baseless accusations against John, claiming he was turning me against him. When we finally departed, Daniel slammed the door with such force that I thought it might shatter. As we headed to the car, I heard a crash from inside the house, likely Daniel throwing something in his temper. John helped me move my belongings to FRR's place, where I've been staying recently. I later learned from a friend that Daniel had been blaming John for everything, absurdly accusing him of trying to steal me away for years and claiming that John had finally seized his chance. This was laughable for many reasons, especially considering John and I have always maintained a polite yet distant rapport, mostly interacting during family gatherings without much closeness. The notion of him scheming to steal me was preposterous. Daniel was clearly searching for someone to blame other than himself. My family's reaction was nearly as frustrating as his. They bombarded me with messages, urging me to consider therapy and not to discard our marriage over a single mistake. My mother even dared to suggest that every marriage faces hurdles and that fleeing at the first sign of trouble was unreasonable, as if publicly humiliating your spouse on your wedding day, despite promises made, was a minor issue. They only ceased their intrusions when I threatened to cut ties with them if they couldn't support me during this turmoil. This silenced them at last. It's been about a week since the wedding, and things have started to settle. I'm still at FRR's, looking for my own apartment. Daniel has reduced his texting, though he still sends occasional messages, pleading for reconciliation or claiming I'm discarding our relationship over trivialities. I've largely ignored these attempts. I've consulted with a lawyer about the annulment and have been advised to save all communications where Daniel admits his wrongdoing, in case he contests the proceedings. John has kindly offered to provide a statement if needed, which I appreciate. Interestingly, many people have suggested I should consider dating John, which I found amusing. Curious about the idea and whether John had any hidden motives, I tested the waters after retrieving my things from Daniel's and asked him if he'd like to grab coffee. Just the 5 of us. He graciously declined, explaining he was already in a relationship with someone he met at work 3 months ago. He was considerate in his response, suggesting that I needed time to heal and noting that any involvement with him could complicate the situation with Daniel further. This only increased my respect for John, affirming that his support was genuine and without any ulterior motives. John has been nothing but kind, reaching out occasionally to ensure I'm managing all right since we decided to remain friends. I shared this post with him, and he was genuinely uplifted by reading your comments. He found particular amusement in those suggesting he might still have feelings for me, which gave us both a lighthearted moment. As for my current focus, I'm dedicating time to self-care. I've returned to work, only taking a few days off after the canceled wedding, as extended leave wasn't possible. I'm in the process of finding a new apartment and trying to come to terms with recent events. Seeking therapy is on my agenda, not to salvage my marriage, contrary to my family's wishes, but to navigate my way through the feelings of betrayal and embarrassment that have been weighing on me. Your support has been incredibly comforting. It reassures me that my feelings are valid and understood by others, and that I'm not overreacting. Regarding the incident itself, some of you inquired about the photo editor and the wedding photos. Yes, photos were taken during the unfortunate cake incident by a photo editor Daniel's friend hired. I have yet to see these photos and have no desire to. It appears Daniel has them, and he can choose to do with them as he pleases. I'm no longer concerned about it. I was deeply involved in our family's jewelry business for 12 years, a venture originally founded by my grandfather and later managed by my father. Over the years, I devoted myself wholeheartedly to the business, anticipating that I would one day take the reins, especially as the older sister with a keen interest and involvement in the business since my teenage years. My father often hinted that he expected me to eventually lead the company, particularly because my younger sister, at 37, showed little interest in pursuing a career, preferring instead to focus on marriage and family life. Despite my commitment, where I even quit my job to join the family business full-time as my dad's personal assistant, the unexpected happened. Just 8 months ago, my father decided to hand over control of the business to my estranged sister and her wealthy fiancé, both of whom had been disconnected from our family for over 17 years due to a series of poor decisions made by my sister. When she was 16, she rejected the idea of college to find herself, leading to a falling out with our parents. They offered her an ultimatum: pursue higher education or leave the family home. She chose the latter and left under acrimonious terms, severing ties with our family. The decision to pass the business to her and her fiancé came as a shock, especially given her long absence and previous disinterest in the family dynamics and business. The situation took a more painful turn when, after they abandoned the business following a health scare my father suffered, he pleaded for my help to stabilize the business. Despite everything, I found myself ousted from the business I had helped to sustain and grow, a business I had believed would be my future. This experience has been a profound lesson in familial relationships and business, highlighting the importance of formal agreements and clear communication. It's a stark reminder of how quickly expectations can be overturned, leaving one to reconsider the foundations of trust and commitment within a family structure. She maintained her distance from us initially, holding on to her strong sense of pride. Despite our expectations and the promises she made, she chose not to pursue college because it didn't capture her interest. Instead, she moved in with a friend for a while before securing a job that allowed her to support the lifestyle she desired. Over time, she changed jobs frequently, but eventually settled into a stable position at an advertising agency. Things took a serious turn about a year ago when our dad became critically ill with heart issues. Facing the severity of his condition, he decided to reach out to her, hoping to mend their strained relationship. After 17 years, she responded, showing her growth and maturity by choosing to reunite with the family. When she visited, the focus was on reconnecting rather than delving into the specifics of her life. We enjoyed reliving memories and didn't press for more details, content with knowing about her professional success from others. Her return was filled with emotion and marked a significant moment of healing between her and our father. The joy of their reconciliation was overwhelming, and during her next visit, she surprised everyone by bringing her fiancé. She revealed that they had been together for 5 years and had recently gotten engaged. This was news to all of us, as she had kept the relationship private, especially since she hadn't realized the gravity of our father's health issues until recently. Her decision to introduce her fiancé at this time felt right, and it was clear he was doing well for himself, given his refined appearance. Overall, her journey of self-discovery and eventual reconnection with the family brought a lot of joy and a few surprises along the way, reminding us all of the unpredictable nature of life and the importance of family ties. At a time when it seemed like she had found her ideal partner, a man who was financially secure, focused on his career, and clearly had his future mapped out, I felt a sense of relief and happiness for her. During our conversations, it came out that her fiancé, much like her first boyfriend, was the offspring of a successful businessman who owned a chain of fast food restaurants. However, unlike her first boyfriend, this man appeared genuinely committed to her. It was evident they were deeply in love, and I was sincerely happy for them, offering my heartfelt congratulations. About 5 weeks after meeting them, my father made an unexpected decision that would change everything. Despite having handed over the operational reins of our family business to me due to his failing health, preparing me to eventually take over as CEO, he suddenly proposed that my sister and her fiancé should instead inherit the business. This shocking news was delivered one morning when he asked me to return home from work for a discussion. Arriving at my parents' home, I found only them there, their expressions somber. After some initial small talk, my father broke the news. I was taken aback, initially thinking he was joking. When I realized he was serious, I was stunned. I pressed him for his reasons, which he initially withheld. After a heated exchange, he disclosed that he believed they would be more capable managers than I would be. He explained that this decision was also meant as a welcoming gesture, a wedding gift as they approached their marriage. I argued that transferring the entire business as a wedding gift was excessive, especially when I had been led to believe that I would inherit it upon his retirement. I had built my entire career around this expectation. I suggested making us partners in the business, trying to negotiate a compromise, considering the future at stake. Despite my efforts, my father remained resolute in his decision, convinced it was the right choice. I felt utterly devastated when I learned my father decided to hand over our family's jewelry business to my sister and her fiancé's family. Despite my sister's fiancé's father having his own success and plans to rapidly expand the business, it was a tough pill to swallow. I had dedicated 12 years of my life to this business, not just aiming for profit, but to earn my father's respect and approval. Yet, all my efforts seemed futile as he wouldn't even consider giving me a chance, completely dismissing my plea. That rejection shattered me deeply. It wasn't merely about losing a significant opportunity. It was about not being valued despite my long-standing dedication. My heartache deepened because I was ousted from something that was more than a business to me. It was a dream I had nurtured since I was a teenager, vocal about my ambition to lead the family business once my father retired. But when the business was presented as a wedding gift to my sister, it felt like my dreams were being handed over too. She even celebrated this gift on social media, further cementing her new role without considering my feelings. This act of acknowledgement from her and our family's silent compliance felt like a profound betrayal. The lack of concern for my family after I left home was painfully clear. No one reached out, which only magnified the emotional turmoil I felt. I had invested so much of myself into our family and the business, and in return, I felt used and discarded. Gratefully, I had some savings, which allowed me some time to reflect and seek help. 8 months ago, I began therapy to tackle the spiraling depression that threatened to overwhelm me. I had to distance myself further from the pain, choosing to block my sister on social media and asking relatives to spare me any family news, as I couldn't bear to hear about the business or their lives. This arrangement held until a week ago when I unexpectedly received a call from my father, who had managed to reach me despite being blocked. He was in the hospital, having suffered a cardiac arrest. Suddenly, all the distance I had put between us seemed trivial in the face of his mortality. He asked me to come see him, and despite everything, I found myself packing to visit, the weight of the past and the uncertainty of reconciliation heavy on my heart. So, he ended up borrowing someone else's phone to contact me. At first, I was overwhelmed with guilt hearing from him, but then the memories of his actions 8 months earlier lessened that feeling. Once he explained his struggles and needed me, I dropped everything and rushed to the hospital to support him. Both my parents were there, yet to my astonishment, neither my sister nor her fiancé were present. It was puzzling because they were usually inseparable, especially since they were involved in our family business. In the hospital room, my curiosity got the better of me, and I inquired about my sister and her fiancé. My father, visibly let down, informed me that they were too caught up in their work to visit. This was hard to understand because, having managed the business before, I knew it well enough to say it practically ran itself unless a significant issue arose. There was rarely a need to be at the workplace all day, every day. When I asked my dad if my sister and her fiancé had visited since his heart attack, he said they hadn't, only responding to his calls with brief texts saying they were busy and would visit after his discharge. Hearing this was startling. It seemed my father regretted passing the business reins to them, as he then confessed. His reason for calling was to apologize for previously ousting me from the business despite my dedication. He expressed deep regret and guilt over the decision, wanting to make amends and reintegrate me into the family business. The absence of my sister and her fiancé at the hospital had opened his eyes. They didn't seem to care for him in the way he had believed. Over the past few months, their visits had dwindled, whereas they used to check on him frequently, especially when his health first began to decline. Their excuses about being swamped at work didn't hold up, given that their home was only a few blocks from my parents. Though he had kept his peace until now, it seemed they had finally pushed him too far. A breaking point had been reached, and my father decided he could no longer endure the lack of respect that seemed pervasive. He resolved to reclaim his business and ensure it was managed by someone truly worthy. This pivotal decision was discussed in a hospital room where he was recuperating. Amidst the sterile surroundings, he extended an invitation for me to rejoin the business, an offer that filled me with immense happiness. He apologized for past grievances, and though I hadn't fully moved on, I chose to forgive him. At that moment, nothing was more crucial than reclaiming what I believed was rightfully mine, even if it meant forgiving my father. However, the situation complicated further when I learned he had a similar discussion with my sister. He expressed a desire for her to step aside, having realized that despite his paternal affection, she had not reciprocated in ways that mattered to him. This revelation was met with dismay from my sister, who inexplicably pointed fingers at me for the upheaval. She confronted me with harsh words, accusing me of cruelty, a charge that left me baffled. Her reaction seemed disproportionate, hinting at unknown undercurrents fueling her distress. My sister's resentment stemmed, in part, from her absence during our father's hospitalization following a cardiac arrest, an event she chose to miss due to work commitments. Her priorities then contrast starkly with her current portrayal of victimhood. Just months ago, she had no qualms accepting a generous gift from our father, one she knew deep down she didn't deserve. Now, faced with losing her stake in the business, her despair was palpable, yet in my eyes, self-inflicted. I attempted to offer comfort, but she terminated our conversation abruptly. This left me wondering if somehow I was the antagonist in her narrative. It's exhausting continually being perceived as the one at fault. Subsequently, I shared my ordeal online, and the supportive responses were affirming. It reassured me that my perspective wasn't skewed. Days passed without any word from my sister, though she hasn't severed ties completely, which I take as a positive sign. Yet, I suspect there's more to her situation, possibly linked to her fiancé's financial troubles, which she hasn't disclosed. The dynamics of her fiancé's family business might be contributing to her current distress, a theory that has crossed my mind but remains unconfirmed. This ordeal has laid bare the complex, often hidden layers of personal and familial relationships, teaching me that the surface seldom tells the whole story. I recently took over as the new CEO of my dad's jewelry business, and it feels amazing to be in charge. However, the journey here is filled with unexpected twists and family drama. A few weeks ago, my sister was devastated when she learned that I would be rejoining the family business, and she was being phased out. It seemed odd, especially since she has a wealthy fiancé who owns his own company. Why would she care so much about our family business when she seemed to have everything? Her reaction didn't make sense, and I sensed something was off. As it turns out, my instincts were right. My sister and her fiancé had been plotting to take over our family business subtly. They saw it as a safety net for when her fiancé's father eventually stepped down from his company, a company which, I later learned, was struggling significantly in the market. This revelation came to light after some deep conversations with my dad. Initially, He was swayed by the idea of bringing my sister and her fiancé into the business, believing that someone from a well-established business family would manage better than me. He had even considered making my sister's fiancé a significant part of the business, influenced by my sister's suggestions. Thankfully, my father realized the mistake before any formal documents were signed, which could have led to a massive family and business conflict. He had almost been manipulated into handing over control due to his misjudgment and the appealing but deceptive proposition made by my sister and her fiancé. Once everything came to light, my father decided to make things right. His priority shifted to securing the business's future with someone he truly trusted, me. We consulted with a lawyer and prepared the necessary paperwork to formalize my position as CEO. Now, as the official CEO, I feel a profound sense of responsibility and excitement. Despite my sister's dramatic reactions and her unhappiness about the situation, I'm focused on moving forward and steering our family business towards success. My father and I have mended our relationship, and I'm grateful we navigated through this challenging time together, preventing what could have been a disastrous takeover. Now, it's all about looking ahead and building on the legacy that's been entrusted to me. When such a significant event was looming, neither my sister nor I made the effort to communicate, which in hindsight was quite unwise. Recently, just before I was confirmed as the new CEO, my sister reached out, setting her pride aside to admit her motives. She and her fiancé were in dire need of employment because her fiancé's father might not be able to support them much longer. She asked for my help, and I said I'd consider it. While I'm open to hiring them, the trust between us has been irreparably damaged because I know their initial intentions. Now, I'm caught in a dilemma. I want to assist her, yet how can I employ people I don't trust? I asked for some time to think it over, which she has respected so far. However, I've ultimately decided against hiring my sister and her fiancé. Some might view this decision as selfish, but I can't overlook the lack of compassion they've shown. When my father first offered them a chance to take over the company, they accepted without hesitation and didn't contact me for the next 8 months. I don't want such self-centered individuals in my life or working in my company. Unfortunately, my sister reacted poorly to my decision. She confronted me in my office, accusing me of being heartless and regretting that she ever allowed me to take over the company. Her claim was unfounded. It was my father's decision to appoint me, not hers. Her dramatic outburst escalated to the point where I felt compelled to call the police for assistance. Since then, we haven't heard from her. I am prepared to take further legal action if necessary, but for now, I hope this situation will resolve itself as I focus on my responsibilities as CEO.